Fundevogel, the magical tale of friendship and escape. Long ago, at the edge of a great forest, a kind forester and his wife lived with their little daughter, Lina. Their home was small and simple, a cottage built of oak and love, but it stood warm under the tall trees. One autumn evening, the forester wandered deep into the woods in search of fallen wood. As he passed through the shadows, he heard a soft cry from above, a sound like a baby weeping in the wind. Looking up, he saw a tiny boy resting in the crook of a beech tree wrapped in golden leaves. Amazed, he climbed up, lifted the child into his arms, and carried him home. The baby smiled at him as if they had always known each other. "He must be heaven sent," whispered the forester's wife. They named him Fundevogel, the found bird. From that night on, Fundevogel and Lina were never apart. They grew up like two seeds from the same pod, playing among ferns, chasing light through branches, laughing at nothing and everything. If Lina was steady and careful, Fundevogel was quick and bright. Together, they made perfect balance. When storms raged, Fundevogel told stories that made Lina brave. When he caught fever once, she stayed by his bed all night, whispering songs until the fever flew away. Everyone in the cottage loved them, except the cook. The cook was a harsh woman with a heart as cold as her knives. She disliked the boy she called the forest's foundling. His laughter bothered her, and his kindness made her uneasy. "That one's not natural," she would mutter. "No good comes from trees that bear children." One morning, as Lina kneaded bread, the cook whispered to her scullery maid, "Tomorrow we shall heat the great kettle. I'll trick that boy into climbing inside. Then we'll see if his magic can save him from boiling water." Lina overheard. Her hands turned to ice. That night, when the house was dark and quiet, she crept to Fundevogel's bed. "Wake up," she whispered. "We must leave before dawn. The cook means us harm." Fundevogel blinked sleep away, then nodded. "I trust you," he said simply. They packed a crust of bread and a small flask of water. Before leaving, Fundevogel touched the old beech carving above the door, a symbol of the forest that had once protected him. "Guide us again," he whispered. Under the silver moon, the two children slipped into the woods. Their bare feet whispered across moss and roots. The forest, which had been their playground, now seemed to watch over them like a parent. When morning came, the cook discovered their empty beds. Her rage shook the kitchen like thunder. "Run as far as you like," she snarled. "You cannot outrun me." She sent 2 servants into the forest to bring them back. Lina and Fundevogel had reached a clearing by then, sunlight dappling their faces. But soon they heard footsteps and dogs barking behind them. "They're coming," Lina gasped. "Then we'll become what they cannot chase," Fundevogel said. He held Lina's hands, whispered to the wind, and in an instant magic filled the air. When the servants entered the clearing, the children were gone. In their place grew a rose bush covered with 100 blossoms, and at its root lay a single rose red as Lina's lips. The men looked around, confused. "No children, only a thorny bush," one grumbled. When he reached to pluck the flower, a thorn pricked his hand so sharply that blood ran down his wrist. Swearing, he turned back. When they were gone, the rose petals shimmered, and the children stood once more, holding hands. But the cook was not finished. Furious at her servant's failure, she sent 2 huntsmen, men cleverer and crueler than the first. "Bring them back," she hissed, "or I'll have your heads instead." By then, Lina and Fundevogel had crossed into deeper woods where moss carpeted everything like quiet snow. They were hungry, tired, and afraid, but they did not stop. When the sound of snapping branches came again behind them, Lina whispered, "It's no use running forever." "Then we'll hide differently this time," Fundevogel said with a spark in his eyes. "Think of what we must become." The huntsmen burst through the trees and halted. Before them stood not children, but a small chapel gleaming white in the forest gloom, with a single bell swaying in the wind and a gentle flame flickering inside. No footsteps, no laughter, just silence and holiness. The men hesitated, removed their caps, and bowed their heads. "This forest is bewitched," one muttered. "Let's leave the spirits to themselves." As soon as they disappeared, the chapel shimmered and vanished, and Lina and Fundevogel stood in its place, pale but smiling. "They won't find us twice the same way," Lina said, catching her breath. "But she will send more," Fundevogel replied. "We must reach the river before dark." They ran until their lungs burned. As the sun dipped low, they came to a broad, calm river, glinting gold beneath the sky. Dragonflies hovered, and the water whispered softly to the reeds. Lina knelt, exhausted. "If we cross, we'll be safe," she said. "Then the river will help us," Fundevogel replied. When the cook's last hunters reached the shore, they saw nothing but water and reeds, except for a duck gliding gently across the surface and a blue flower swaying on the opposite bank. The men searched, shouted, and cursed, but the river answered only with ripples. At last they gave up and went home, trembling. The duck spread its wings, and in a shimmer of light became Fundevogel again. The blue flower bloomed brighter, and there was Lina, smiling with relief. They had escaped. For a long moment they stood on the far bank, watching the forest grow smaller behind them. The setting sun painted the sky in gold and rose. "Will we ever go home again?" Lina asked softly. Fundevogel took her hand. "Home is where we are together," he said. "The forest gave me life, but you gave me reason to live it." They walked on until they found a small village at the forest's edge. There a kind old woman took them in. She gave them food, shelter, and safety. The children grew strong and wise and never forgot the lessons the forest taught them, that love is the truest magic, that courage wears many faces, and that kindness, once planted, grows wild and unstoppable. And as for the cook, she vanished one day into the same woods she had cursed. Some say the thorns of a rose bush tangled her path and would not let her go. Others say the forest simply took back what was never kind. Years later, travelers spoke of a pair who lived by the river, a woodcarver and a baker, whose laughter filled their home like sunlight through leaves. Some said on quiet nights the sound of a flute drifted from their window, playing a tune so old it might have belonged to the trees themselves. And if you ever walk that way, listen closely, for the forest still hums their names: Lina, Fundevogel,